Westall UFO Encounter. Over 200 students and teachers from the Westall High School in Australia reported seeing a strange, saucer-shaped object in the sky. The UFO was seen hovering over the school before descending and landing in a nearby grassy field. Many students and teachers ran outside to get a better look. They saw the object on the ground or just above it for several minutes. Some witnesses even reported seeing smaller objects or figures near the main UFO. After a short while, the UFO rose up, tilted slightly, and rapidly ascended into the sky, disappearing from sight. The encounter caused quite a commotion at the school. Some students tried to get closer to the object, but teachers kept them at a distance for safety. Shortly after the sighting, men in suits believed to be government officials visited the school and instructed the witnesses not to talk about what they had seen. Some of the students and teachers claimed they were intimidated and told that it was part of a secret military exercise. No official explanation was ever provided. Frederick Valentich disappearance. Frederick Valentich, an Austrian pilot, was doing a training flight when he said there was another aircraft in the sky about 1,000 feet above him, and then his engine started acting up. He described the UFO as large, with 4 bright landing lights, and very shiny with a single green light on it. It was traveling very fast and started circling around him. One of his last radio messages said the craft above him was not an aircraft. Shortly after that, his radio transmission was cut off by a metallic scraping sound, and contact was lost. There's many theories on what Frederick saw. Some say that he could have been flying upside down and seeing his own reflection. Some say that he was confused by the illusion of a tilted horizon, which caused him to enter a graveyard spiral. But we might never know the truth. Roswell Incident. A local rancher named Mac Brazel discovered unusual debris scattered across a field on the Foster Ranch, about 30 miles north of Roswell, and reported the matter to the local authorities. The next day, the Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release stating that they had recovered a flying disc from the crash site. This caused a media frenzy, with newspapers and radio stations across the country reporting on the recovered UFO. A strange thing happened, however. The initial statement was retracted within hours, and a new one was released, claiming that the debris was actually from a downed weather balloon. They displayed pieces of the debris to the press, which seemed to support this explanation, and the story was forgotten for years, until the late 1970s, when UFO researchers began interviewing individuals who claimed to have been involved in the recovery operation, officials included. These interviews revealed alleged new information, including claims of a cover-up and the recovery of alien bodies and technologies from the crash site, giving life to the theory that the weather balloon story was just a cover-up. Ellsworth UFO Sighting. On August 5, 1953, strange lights were seen in the sky over Ellsworth Air Base in South Dakota. These lights showed up on radar at about 16,000 feet. An F-84 jet was sent to check it out after a warning officer at the base ordered a pilot to intercept the UFO. When the pilot got about 3 miles from the UFO, it started to move quickly, climbing higher into the sky. The F-84 chased it for a while, but eventually the pilot had to go back to base because he was running out of fuel. The UFO then turned around and followed the pilot back to the base, staying about 10 miles away from the jet. Another F-84 was ready to go, so the chase continued with a new pilot. However, the chase didn't last long because the UFO eventually flew off, but not before showing up on the new pilot's radar. Lubbock Lights. From August 25th to September 5th, 1951, many UFO sightings were reported in Lubbock, Texas. The first sightings happened on August 25th and were seen by 3 college professors. They saw 12 to 30 lights flying overhead. After a while, another group of lights flew by. On September 5th, the same 3 professors, along with 2 other professors, saw the lights again. This time, they described the lights as being the size of dinner plates and greenish blue. They saw about a dozen lights this time, not 20 or 30 like before. On August 30th, a college freshman named Carl Hart Jr. saw the lights too. He described 18 white lights flying in a V shape, and he took 5 photos of them. The investigation found that before these sightings, several people in the area had seen an object flying that looked like the YB-49 flying wing bomber, a U.S. prototype bomber built in 1947. But those sightings said the object made no sound as it flew, which the YB-49 could not do. Rendlesham Forest Incident. 2 officers were on duty when they saw unusual lights descending into the nearby Rendlesham forest. Thinking it might be a downed aircraft, they went into the forest to investigate. They reported encountering a small, triangular-shaped craft with a metallic surface, covered in strange symbols, similar to hieroglyphics, and when one officer touched it, he felt a static-like sensation. The craft emitted bright lights and seemed to hover above the ground. After a few minutes, the craft reportedly rose through the trees and disappeared. 2 nights later, strange lights were again observed in the forest, and a group of servicemen were sent to investigate. They witnessed a series of flashing lights and a glowing object that split into multiple smaller objects. Upon investigation, they found triangular impressions in the soil where the craft was said to have landed, and elevated levels of radiation were detected in the area, higher than the normal background levels. Trent UFO Photos. Paul and Evelyn Trent and Paul's father saw a UFO in the sky. Surprised by what they saw, they took 2 pictures of it. After they took the photos, the UFO flew off to the west and they never saw it again. A few days later, they gave the photos to Life magazine, and these photos became some of the most well-known UFO pictures. Kelly-Hopkinsville Encounter. A group of 11 people was at the farmhouse of the Sutton family, including family members and friends, when one of them went to the well to fetch water and reported seeing a bright, rainbow-colored object streaking across the sky, claiming that it landed nearby. Initially, the others were skeptical, but soon the dogs began barking incessantly, indicating something unusual was happening outside. Shortly after, the group noticed small humanoid figures approaching the house. They had a metallic sheen, which led some to refer to them as little silver men or goblins, and they moved in an odd, swaying manner, as if floating rather than walking. Frightened, the men armed themselves with a shotgun and a rifle and began shooting at the creatures, even though they claimed that the bullets had little effect, causing the beings to either flip over or retreat momentarily, only to reappear later. This back and forth continued for several hours, with the creatures peering into windows and appearing on the roof, but eventually, around 11 p.m., the family decided to flee the farmhouse and seek help from the police. A group of police officers, along with military police, went to the farmhouse to investigate. They found no creatures, but did notice evidence of the shooting and the damage described by the Suttons. Because there was nothing there, the police left, and all was good until the next night, when around 3:30 in the morning, the aliens returned, and all 12 people staying there immediately ran out. It's believed that these aliens were actually just great horned owls, ghost rockets. A strange object was seen flying in the skies above Sweden and Finland, and after that, more than 2,000 similar objects were seen over the next year. These objects looked like rockets or missiles and were even seen on radar. They were usually silent, but sometimes made a hissing sound as they flew by. People called them ghost rockets, and at first, people thought these were test rockets or missiles from the Soviet Union, maybe using captured German rockets from World War II. But this idea was quickly dismissed because investigators from the US, Sweden, and Britain didn't find any rocket fragments, when some of them crashed into lakes. Officially, both the US and Swedish military don't know what these ghost rockets were, and some US Air Force investigators thought they might be alien in origin, as suggested in a declassified document from 1948. Wow signal. Ohio State University's Big Ear telescope picked up a narrow radio signal from the direction of the Sagittarius constellation. The signal was called the WOW signal because when astronomer Jerry Amon found it, he was so surprised that he wrote WOW next to it. The signal lasted about 72 seconds and has never been detected again. People started to wonder if this was the first contact from alien life, and to this day, it's still considered by some as the best evidence for alien life. Phoenix Lights. A big UFO was seen flying from Henderson, Nevada to Tucson, Arizona. The UFO had 9, or maybe 6 or 5, large lights in a V-shape. People reported that the UFO blocked out the stars as it passed, so they believed it was a solid object. Some even said it was gray in color. What makes this event special is how many people saw it. About 700, including the governor of Arizona at the time. The Phoenix Lights showed up again on February 6, 2007, but the military said it was just flares dropped by F-16s during training. They appeared again on April 21, 2008. But it turned out to be helium balloons with flares, released by a Phoenix resident's neighbor for attention. But about the original sighting, no one knows for sure what it was. Maury Island Incident. A man named Kenneth Arnold went to Maury Island in Washington state to investigate claims by 2 harbor men who said they had pieces of a UFO. The harbor men said that on June 21, 1947, they, along with one man's son, saw several UFOs while on their boat. They said there were 6 of them and that the UFOs started spewing out metal fragments that looked like lava. Some of these fragments landed on their boat, killing their pet dog and injuring the son. Later that day, a strange man in a suit told them not to talk about what they saw. Things got weirder when Kenneth Arnold contacted Lieutenant Frank Brown and Captain William Davidson from military intelligence in California. They interviewed the harbor men and collected the fragments. On their way back to California, their B-25 bomber crashed and both men died. The FBI took over the case almost immediately and almost instantly labeled the sighting as a hoax. The FBI stated that the 2 men who reported the sighting were doing it as a prank. The FBI then decided that the pair weren't to blame directly for the deaths of Frank Brown and William Davidson and so let them off with a warning. Foo Fighters. During the war, Allied pilots sometimes saw strange glowing orbs or balls of light that didn't show up on radars, and that flew around at high speeds and made turns that no plane at the time could make. Some pilots said the orbs just flew around, but others said the orbs chased them but never attacked. Most pilots thought these orbs were new secret weapons made by the enemy. After the war, German scientists, engineers, and officers were asked about these lights, but none of them knew what they were talking about. Battle of Los Angeles. On the nights of February 24, 1942, air raid alarms went off around Los Angeles, California, warning of a possible Japanese attack. This went on until early February 25th, when the military said it was a false alarm. During these hours, the U.S. military fired many 50-caliber machine guns and anti-aircraft shells at what they thought was an enemy aircraft. By the time the alarm stopped at 7 a.m. the next morning, over 1,400 shells were fired. Several buildings were damaged by shell fragments, and 5 people died. Some people said the military saw a large UFO and attacked it, using the Japanese as an excuse. But there's a lot of evidence suggesting this was a false alarm, and that the military likely mistook a weather balloon for a UFO due to the stress and fear of another attack after Pearl Harbor, which happened less than 3 months earlier. In 1945, after the war, the Japanese government confirmed they never flew planes over Los Angeles during the war, so it wasn't a real battle. Tehran UFO Incident. 2 Iranian Air Force jets called Phantom IIs intercepted a UFO that showed up on radar over Iran's capital. As the jets got close to the UFO, their communication systems stopped working, and one jet's weapon systems also failed. The UFO was described as round and flashing lights so brightly that the pilots could barely see its shape. The UFO also had a secondary vessel, as a bright object came out of the craft and headed towards the ground. It might not have been another craft, but maybe a weapon, as people near where it landed heard a loud noise and saw a bright flash of light, even though there were no remains of any bomb fragments. Another bright light came out of the UFO, a torpedo of light, as one pilot described it. The pilot managed to avoid the torpedo, which then flew back to the UFO and re-entered it. After this, the UFO flew off into the atmosphere and was never seen again. Levelland UFO Case. 15 different people reported that they saw a UFO on the same day and in a really similar way. All of them were driving when they saw a UFO in the middle of the road. As they got closer, their engines stopped working, but when the UFO left, they started working normally once again. The Air Force did an investigation, and after spending a few hours in the town and interviewing 3 eyewitnesses, they came to the conclusion that what the people saw was actually just ball lightning, or St. Elmo's fire. Many people thought that the Air Force either didn't take this case seriously or were covering up something, as they investigated for a really short period of time. Berkshire UFO Incident. In Berkshire, Massachusetts, many different people who didn't know each other reported seeing the same thing, a strange and really bright light in the sky, moving in unusual ways that normal aircraft couldn't. The particular thing about this incident is that many people said that they couldn't remember what happened for a while during the time they saw the UFO. It's like a part of their memory was blank. They also found themselves in different places and didn't know how they got there. JAL Flight 1628 Incident. A Japanese Airlines cargo plane, JAL Flight 1628, was flying from Paris to Tokyo with a stop in Alaska when they saw 2 small, fast-moving objects near their plane. These objects had bright lights and moved quickly in a way that no aircraft could. Shortly after, they saw a much larger object, described as having the shape of a walnut and being as big as 2 aircraft carriers. The crew reported that the large object stayed close to their plane for about 50 minutes until they reported the sighting to air traffic control, which confirmed that they saw something on the radar, even though they couldn't confirm what it was. This incident involved multiple witnesses and radar confirmations from both civilian and military sources. Hudson Valley Wave. The Hudson Valley Wave refers to a series of UFO sightings that occurred in the Hudson Valley region of New York, as well as parts of Connecticut, where a massive amount of witnesses, which included police officers, pilots, and other credible observers, reported seeing large and silent V-shaped objects with bright lights flying low and slowly over the area. They often described the UFO as being so large that it blocked out the stars. Many of the sightings occurred near the Indian Point nuclear power plant, leading to speculation that the UFOs were interested in the facility. Despite various theories, the events remain unexplained and are considered some of the most credible UFO sightings due to the incredible number of witnesses, their credibility, and their detailed and consistent descriptions. Shag Harbour Incident. In Canada, many people saw a large, bright object with 4 flashing orange lights in the sky. The object was moving quickly and seemed to crash into the waters off Shag Harbour. Local residents, including fishermen and police, saw the object hit the water and reported it, so the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the Coast Guard quickly came to investigate. They saw a yellow light on the water and found a large area of yellow foam, but they couldn't find any debris or wreckage. The Canadian Navy also searched the water with divers, but they didn't find anything either. There was no evidence of a plane crash or any missing aircraft. If you want to discuss this video or suggest an idea for the next one, join my Discord. Link in the description.